He thought it was just another repair job, rusted plating and fried circuits. But when the armored stranger offered payment in stellarite crystals, Ren Blackwell knew this was no frontier farmer's gear. The diagnostic scan revealed systems far beyond anything built in Rust Harbor, and the woman inside carried secrets heavier than battle armor. Ren's workshop operated on simple rules. Good work for fair payment, no names exchanged, no histories told. Rust Harbor lay at the edge of civilized space, a dust-choked settlement where people came to disappear or be forgotten. The air smelled of ozone and baked clay. Ren preferred it that way. His philosophy took root years earlier. His mother died because corporate engineers deemed her mining rig too damaged to repair. They replaced the entire crew instead of fixing the faulty pressure seal. Ren kept every salvaged bolt, every stripped wire, every broken component others threw away. He believed nothing was beyond repair if you understood its workings. The workshop felt like an extension of that belief. Faded tool cabinets stood against corrugated walls. Hydraulic fluid stained the concrete floor in rainbow patterns. Salvaged engine blocks sat disassembled on workbenches, their parts arranged like surgical instruments. Ren knew each component's history, each repair story. Most customers brought farming equipment or ground transport units patched with homemade welds. Then the armored woman arrived. Her suit gleamed with a molecular finish no frontier smith could replicate. The armor's joints moved with hydraulic silence instead of grinding gears. Radiation symbols marked the power core housing, a design Ren had only seen in old military schematics. This wasn't frontier tech. This was sovereign-grade hardware, the kind that belonged in fleet armories, not dusty repair bays. She placed 3 stellarite crystals on his workbench. Their internal light pulsed like captured stars. Each crystal could power a settlement for months. Frontier payments usually involved fuel vouchers or fresh produce. Stellarite meant interstellar wealth or interstellar trouble. Ren's hand hovered above the crystals. His fingers remembered the weight of his mother's engineering manuals where such crystals were theoretical concepts. Every instinct told him to refuse. This armor meant attention. Attention meant danger. But his curiosity overrode the warning. The suit's neural interface ports gleamed with proprietary alloys. The hydraulic systems used self-sealing tech that could patch battle damage automatically. He had to understand how it worked. He ran a diagnostic scanner over the chest plate. The readout flickered with encryption warnings. Ren bypassed them using methods his mother taught him. Backdoor codes and hardware overrides that corporate engineers never anticipated. The scanner revealed systems that shouldn't exist. Quantum entangled comms, plasma shield projectors, biometric sensors with DNA-level resolution. The woman watched him work. Her eyes held the flat calm of someone who'd seen too much violence. She didn't flinch when tools sparked against armor plating, didn't react when the diagnostic probe revealed energy signatures from weapons fire. Ren realized her silence wasn't just caution. It was operational discipline. He finally understood why she chose his workshop. Not for his skill, though, that helped. She needed a place so insignificant, so beneath notice, that Imperial search algorithms would never flag it. Rust Harbor didn't appear on standard navigational charts. His workshop didn't appear on Rust Harbor's municipal registries. He operated in the blind spots of systems designed to find people like her. The diagnostic complete, Ren prepared to open the armor's primary housing. His tools gleamed under the work lights. The woman's breathing remained even. Somewhere beneath layers of advanced systems and battle damage, a human being needed repair, and Ren never turned away broken things. Ren's plasma cutter hissed through armor plating. The metal gave way with a clean chemical scent. Behind the outer layers, systems glowed with soft internal light. Crystal data conduits pulsed with information. Nanite repair fluid seeped from damaged conduits, the microscopic machines already attempting to mend what battle had broken. The neural interface revealed itself as a web of biosensitive filaments. Each strand could read brain activity with surgical precision. Ren had seen standard military interfaces before. Clunky headset systems that required scalp implants. This was different. The filaments could integrate directly with spinal neurons. They permitted control at the speed of thought rather than muscle response. Military-grade alloys formed the internal skeleton. The metal bore maker's marks from fabrication plants in the core systems. Each component carried proprietary encryption that resisted standard diagnostic tools. Ren used homemade bypasses his mother developed for mining equipment. The systems yielded their secrets slowly, reluctantly. The woman called Lyra watched from a stack of crates. Her posture remained relaxed, but her eyes tracked every tool movement. She showed no reaction when the power core reading flashed at 28%. That level indicated weeks of operation without proper recharge facilities. A standard military suit would have shut down at 15. Environmental systems showed catastrophic failure patterns. Radiation shielding had absorbed massive particle weapon impacts. Life support filters were clogged with exotic atmospheric contaminants from worlds Ren only knew from star charts. The suit had operated in vacuum, corrosive atmospheres, and high-gravity environments. Each condition left distinct stress patterns on the components. Ren traced a carbon scoring pattern along the chest plate. The burn marks formed a precise geometric shape. He recognized it as the firing pattern of Dominion Enforcer-class weaponry. Only sovereign security forces carried that hardware. The suit hadn't just seen combat. It had faced the best-equipped military units in the galaxy. Lyra's breathing remained even as he worked. Her calm seemed at odds with the damage surrounding her. Most soldiers showed tension when their protection lay opened up on a workbench. They fidgeted, made nervous jokes, asked repetitive questions about repair timelines. She simply watched. Her stillness felt more like command experience than mere discipline. The suit's internal databanks contained encrypted mission logs. Ren didn't try to break those encryptions. Some lines even he wouldn't cross. But the hardware itself told stories. Scratches from boarding actions, heat distortion from re-entry without proper shielding, impact fractures from close-quarters combat. This armor had protected its wearer through situations that would kill most soldiers. Ren found makeshift repairs alongside the advanced systems. Field welds held broken segments together. Emergency sealant patches covered compromised joints. Someone had used standard-issue medical gel to temporarily fix a leaking hydraulic line. These weren't the actions of a typical sovereign operative. They showed resourcefulness under extreme pressure, adaptation when proper support wasn't available. The diagnostic complete, Ren looked from the open armor to its owner. The contrast struck him. Lyra sat with the poised readiness of someone who could command fleets. Yet her equipment showed the wear patterns of someone who'd been fighting alone for too long. The advanced technology didn't just represent power, it whispered about isolation, about someone cut off from the systems that should have supported her. He cleaned his tools while considering the repairs. The neural interface required specialized biogel he'd need to synthesize. The power core needed rare earth elements not commonly found on the frontier. Each fix would require creative solutions. Lyra finally spoke, her voice cutting through the workshop's hum. She asked about the repair timeline without mentioning the suit's capabilities or her situation. Ren gave his estimate in practical terms. Tools began passing between them as the real work started. The stellarite crystals glowed on the workbench. Their internal light pulsed with a slow rhythm like captured heartbeats. Ren picked one up. The crystal felt cool against his palm despite its energy output. Each facet refracted the workshop's lights into miniature galaxies. The material was translucent but dense, weighing more than its size suggested. These weren't normal frontier currency. Stellarite formed only in specific planetary conditions under immense pressure. Mining required orbital facilities and advanced containment systems. A single crystal could power a small settlement for months. On the open market, it bought passage off-world or silenced inconvenient witnesses. Standard Rust Harbor transactions used practical goods. Fuel canisters preserved food, ammunition, or salvage rights. Ren once repaired a farmer's harvester for 3 cases of fresh vegetables and 2 liters of homemade engine coolant. The community operated on barter and mutual need. Cash credits changed hands rarely, usually for off-world goods transported by traders. The crystals felt wrong in this context. Their presence suggested connections to power networks far beyond the frontier. Someone carrying stellarite either controlled resource extraction operations or moved in circles where such wealth was commonplace. Neither option fit Rust Harbor's dust-choked reality. Ren remembered his mother's engineering manuals. She'd shown him stellarite schematics during night lessons at their kitchen table. The crystals were theoretical concepts then, materials discussed in academic journals but not yet synthesized. She called them the currency of tomorrow's empires. He never expected to hold one in his workshop. Lyra watched him examine the payment. Her expression gave nothing away. The crystal's blue light reflected in her eyes. She didn't seem to consider them remarkable, which was more telling than if she'd emphasized their value. To her, this was normal payment. That casual acceptance marked her as someone from a different reality. The transaction established unspoken terms. Stellarite wasn't just payment, it was a message. It said she understood the risk he was taking. It acknowledged that repairing her armor involved dangers beyond typical frontier work. The crystals also created deniability. If authorities questioned him, he could claim she paid with standard credits. Stellarite left no banking records, no transaction logs. Ren placed the crystals in a shielded container. Their energy signature could attract scavengers or worse. The container's lead lining hummed as it contained the output. He considered the implications. Someone with access to sovereign-grade armor and Stellarite crystals had come to Rust Harbor. That meant trouble was either following her or waiting for her. The payment also created obligation. Stellarite wasn't just valuable. It was notoriously difficult to convert without attracting attention. By accepting it, Ren became part of whatever game she was playing. He couldn't spend the crystals locally without raising questions. Couldn't transport them off-world without proper documentation. They were both payment and leash. Lyra picked up a plasma calibrator from his tool rack. She tested its weight in her hand. The movement felt practiced, familiar. Her fingers found the adjustment dial without looking. She made a minor correction to the tool settings, then offered it back to him. The gesture was both apology and invitation. She knew the crystals complicated things, knew they changed the dynamic between client and mechanic. Ren took the calibrator. Their fingers brushed during the exchange. Her skin felt cool despite the workshop's heat. He recognized the offer for what it was, shared work instead of paid service. The crystals remained in their container, their implications set aside for now. Tools began moving between them as the real conversation started. Tools moved between them without words. Ren handed Lyra a molecular binder. She passed back the calibrated tension gauge. The rhythm developed slowly, each movement measured and precise. His work methodical like clockwork mechanics, hers economical like military drill. Two different disciplines finding common ground in damaged systems. The armor's chest plate glowed under repair lights. Nanied infusion systems hissed as they pumped repair fluid into cracked conduits. Ren worked on the power core calibration, while Lyra realigned the neural interface filaments. Her fingers moved with surgical precision, adjusting connections thinner than human hair. She didn't need magnification tools. Her hands knew this work. Ren asked about the armor's combat history. Lyra's answer came while she tested a hydraulic line. She spoke of watching colonization ships burn in high orbit, described command bridge decisions that sent thousands to die. Her voice remained flat, factual. She mentioned planetary evacuations where she chose which transports received protection. The words carried weight but no emotion. Ren countered with his workshop philosophy. He believed nothing was beyond repair if you understood its broken parts. He described rebuilding generators from scrap metal, fixing environmental systems with homemade components. His voice held the certainty of someone who'd proven his beliefs through daily work. He saw broken things as puzzles waiting for solutions. Lyra watched him recalibrate the suit's sensory array. Her eyes followed his hands as they adjusted delicate optics. She recognized something in his movements, an intuitive connection to machinery that went beyond technical skill. He didn't just repair systems. He understood their language. His tools became extensions of his intention rather than simply instruments. Ren noticed the small signs others might miss. The slight tremble in her hands when discussing battlefield losses. The way her breathing changed when mentioning command decisions. Behind the military precision, he saw weariness. The armor wasn't the only thing that needed repair. She carried damage no nanites could fix. They worked through the night. The workshop's heaters hummed against the desert cold. Tools clicked against metal. Systems powered up with soft activation chimes. Lyra described fleet engagements in the Kessel marches. Ren talked about fixing irrigation systems during drought seasons. Different scales of crisis, similar patterns of response. Ren handed her a plasma torch adjusted to precise settings. Their fingers brushed during the exchange. Her skin felt cooler than the workshop's warmth suggested. He saw the faint scar along her wrist where armor seals had failed. She noticed the burn marks on his hands from years of repair work. Both carried the physical evidence of their choices. Lyra spoke of command isolation, the weight of decisions made alone. Ren described the solitude of frontier repair work. The long nights with only machines for company. Different kinds of loneliness finding unexpected resonance in a dusty workshop. The armor between them became a shared project rather than a client's property. The neural interface filaments glowed as they reconnected. Lyra's breathing synchronized with the system's activation pulse. Ren watched the bio readouts stabilize. His tools had fixed the hardware. Their shared work had started repairing something less tangible. The silence between them felt different now. Not empty space, but understood territory. Dawn light touched the workshop's dusty windows. The armor stood nearly complete on its support frame. Systems hummed with restored function. Ren wiped grease from his hands while Lyra tested the joint articulation. Her movements flowed with the suit's responsive systems. She looked from the repaired armor to the man who'd fixed it. Something unspoken passed between them in that morning light. Ren's hands moved over the armor's neural interface, his touch deliberate. He worked with the patience of someone who believed everything could be mended. His mother's voice echoed in his memory. She used to say repair required two things: the right spare parts and the right swear words. The philosophy guided his work long after her death. He treated each component like it had its own history, its own reason for failure. A cracked conduit wasn't just damaged. It had strained under pressures it wasn't designed to handle. A burnt-out sensor hadn't failed. It had been overwhelmed by input it couldn't process. The sovereign-grade armor presented his ultimate test. Its systems were engineered for replacement, not repair. Standard military doctrine treated damaged equipment as disposable. Field manuals favored swapping entire modules rather than fixing individual components. The armor's design reflected that thinking. Access panels were welded shut. Components were molded into single units. Self-destruct protocols were built into critical systems. Ren approached it like any other broken machine. He studied its patterns, learned its logic, understood what made it work before attempting to make it work again. Lyra watched him work. Her experience involved different systems. Military command operated on replacement logic. Failed officers were reassigned. Compromised agents were terminated. Broken equipment was scrapped. She'd ordered replacements without considering repair options. Efficiency demanded disposable solutions. Ren's approach seemed foreign. He spent hours salvaging a single damaged servo that fleet mechanics would have discarded. His hands moved with reverence over components she'd considered expendable. She recognized something in his method. It wasn't just technical skill. It was a form of hope, the belief that broken things deserved second chances. That damage didn't define ultimate worth. Her world operated on perfection metrics. Anything below standard was eliminated. Ren's workshop celebrated imperfection, patched systems, modified components, creative solutions born from limitation. She saw a different way of operating, one that valued resilience over replacement. Their worldviews began merging through shared work. Lyra explained military system protocols. Ren demonstrated frontier repair techniques. She showed him how to bypass security lockouts. He taught her how to repurpose damaged components. The armor became their meeting ground. His belief in repair tempered her acceptance of loss. Her understanding of systems deepened his technical approach. They found unexpected compatibility between military precision and frontier adaptability. The repair work mirrored their personal situations. Ren's isolation matched Lyra's command loneliness. His belief in fixing broken things applied to more than machinery. She saw how his philosophy could address damaged systems beyond mechanical ones, how it might heal broken loyalties, mend fractured alliances, repair trust that seemed beyond saving. His hands didn't just restore armor. They demonstrated a different way of being. Lyra picked up a plasma calibrator. Her fingers found the adjustment dial by touch. She made a minor correction to the field density, then handed it back. The gesture acknowledged their shared ground. Ren accepted the tool. Their philosophy solidified through action, rather than discussion. Repair wasn't just about restoring function. It was about understanding what made things break in the first place. The neural interface glowed under work lights. Filaments finer than spider silk awaited reconnection. Ren prepared the biogel infusion. Lyra tested the conductivity readings. Their movements synchronized without words. Two different approaches to broken systems found common purpose. The repair became more than technical restoration. It became their shared language. Ren applied the conductive gel to the interface ports. The substance shimmered with embedded nanites. Lyra watched the particles activate under the light. Her expression softened for the first time. She saw not just a repair but a demonstration of something she'd thought lost, the possibility that broken things could be made whole again. That included people, that included systems, that included trust. The interface filaments trembled as power returned to them. Ren's hand steadied the connection points. Lyra's breathing synchronized with the system's activation pulse. The repair reached its final stage. The last neural filament clicked into its housing. The armor systems activated with a low hum that vibrated through the workshop floor. Lights pulsed along the chest plate in rhythmic patterns. The sound wasn't mechanical noise but organic resonance like a sleeping giant's heartbeat. Ren stepped back from the work. Lyra stood opposite him, the repaired armor between them. Dawn light filtered through dust-caked windows. Particles danced in the angled rays. The workshop held its breath. Tools lay scattered across benches where they'd been dropped during the final adjustments. Grease stains marked the concrete where hydraulic fluid had dripped. The air smelled of ozone and fresh solder. Their eyes met across the armor's gleaming surface. Ren saw the fatigue in her expression, the slight softening around her mouth. Lyra noted the grease smudges on his cheek, the way his hands hung relaxed at his sides. The charged silence stretched between them. It wasn't just completion of work. It was acknowledgement of something built alongside the repair. The desert outside lay utterly still. No wind stirred the sand. No early risers moved through Rust Harbor's streets. The world narrowed to this space, this moment, this finished thing that stood testament to their shared labor. The armor seemed more than metal and circuits now. It held the imprint of their hands, the exchange of their philosophies, the unspoken understanding that had grown between them. Ren whispered her name. The word hung in the quiet air. It wasn't a question or summons. Just recognition, just acknowledgement of the person who stood before him, stripped of pretense by exhaustion and completed work. Lyra's breath caught slightly at the sound. Her professional composure wavered for just a second. She moved first. One step around the armor's support frame. Then another. Her boots made no sound on the concrete. Ren stood his ground watching her approach. His hands remained at his sides, palms open. He made no move toward her, simply waited. Their kiss began without hesitation. Her lips tasted of recycled air and battle fatigue. His carried the tang of metal and solder. It wasn't gentle or exploratory. It was collision. Two solitary orbits intersecting with inevitable force. His hands came up to frame her face, his touch careful despite their urgency. Her fingers gripped his work shirt, anchoring herself to something solid. The armor hummed beside them, its systems cycling through activation protocols. Light played across their faces in shifting patterns. The kiss held more than romance. It contained weeks of unspoken tension, nights of shared labor, the dangerous hope that perhaps broken things could be made whole, people, trust, futures. It was surrender from both sides. Ren relinquishing his isolation. Lyra setting aside her command mask. They broke apart slowly. Foreheads rested together. Breath mingled in the narrow space between them. Ren's thumb traced the line of her jaw where armor seals usually pressed. Lyra's hand remained fisted in his shirt as if afraid he might vanish. The moment stretched, fragile and complete. Then the world returned. A dust devil spun past the windows. Somewhere in the settlement, a ground transport engine coughed to life. The workshop's climate control cycled on with a familiar whir. They stepped back from each other, though their hands remained connected. The repaired armor stood between them, its systems now fully active and waiting. Lyra's eyes held his for a long moment. She nodded once, a soldier's acknowledgement of something understood without words. Ren returned the nod, his mechanic's practicality reasserting itself. They turned together toward the armor, the moment sealed but not forgotten. Their hands separated as they reached for the final activation controls. The workshop door exploded inward. Splintered metal flew across the space. Armed figures poured through the opening, weapons raised. The morning's fragile peace shattered into 1,000 flying shards. 3 weeks passed in dust and isolation. Ren worked alone in the wreckage of his workshop. His world narrowed to hammer strikes and welding arcs. Each day began before dawn and ended after dark. His hands bled from handling broken metal. His shoulders ached from lifting beams. The physical labor became its own kind of meditation, a way to process what couldn't be fixed with tools. The compensation from the Dominion arrived without ceremony. A secured cargo container materialized outside town. It contained advanced building materials, precision tools, and enough credits to rebuild Rust Harbor twice over. Ren used only what he needed. The rest remained in the container, a permanent reminder of Imperial generosity that felt like contamination. Every time he handled the smooth alloy beams or calibrated instruments, he remembered repairing her armor. The connection tainted the reconstruction. Neighbors watched from a distance. They brought offerings of food and water, but their eyes held questions. The official story claimed mercenaries had targeted Ren by mistake. Frontier folk knew better. They recognized professional work when they saw it. The precision of the attack, the quality of the compensation materials, the efficiency of the cleanup crew that removed the bodies, these things spoke of off-world involvement. Their mechanic had become someone different, someone connected to powers beyond their understanding. Ren sorted through salvageable components. Each piece carried memories. A plasma cutter reminded him of adjusting its settings for her armored plates. A tension gauge recalled her testing its calibration with military precision. The workbench where they'd shared coffee now stood shattered, its surface scarred by energy weapon impacts. He rebuilt it using the Dominion's perfect materials, but the new wood lacked the character of the original. The community's suspicion grew with each passing day. Farmers who'd once swapped stories over engine repairs now hesitated before speaking. Parents kept children away from the workshop. Ren saw the change in their eyes when he visited the settlement's market. They still traded with him, still accepted his repairs, but the easy familiarity had vanished. He'd become an object of curiosity and caution, a local man touched by galactic-scale intrigue. Nights brought the hardest questions. Ren lay awake listening to the desert wind. He replayed their time together minute by minute. The shared work, the exchange tools, the kiss in the morning light. Had any of it been real? Or was it all calculation? A sovereign needing a mechanic, using whatever tools available to ensure her survival. The possibility cut deeper than any weapon. He'd offered genuine connection, and now wondered if he'd received professional manipulation. His hands continued working through the doubt. They rebuilt walls, installed new ventilation, laid fresh concrete. The physical reconstruction progressed steadily. The workshop took shape around him, cleaner and more efficient than before. The Dominion's materials performed flawlessly. Alloy beams fit perfectly. Sealing compounds bonded instantly. Everything worked as advertised, yet it all felt sterile compared to his previous patchwork construction. Rust Harbor's elders visited one evening. They brought cooked meat and homemade liquor. Their questions came wrapped in frontier courtesy. They asked about the attack, the rebuild, the mysterious benefactor. Ren gave them the official story. They accepted it with polite nods, but their eyes said they knew he was protecting them from truths they didn't want to know. The visit ended with handshakes that felt like farewells. Ren completed the roof installation as the third week ended. The new structure could withstand orbital bombardment. Its security systems could detect approaching threats from kilometers away. He stood looking at the finished workshop, this perfect impervious box. It wasn't his anymore. It was something she had built for him. A gilded cage constructed from compensation and lies. The first shadows fell at noon. Ren looked up from welding a final support brace. The sky darkened not with weather but with descending ships. Their hulls blotted out the sun, casting the settlement into premature twilight. Engines thrummed with power that vibrated through the ground. The fleet had arrived. Shadows fell across Rust Harbor like an unnatural eclipse. The sky filled with descending ships, their hulls sleek and menacing. Engines hummed with power that vibrated through the ground, a deep resonance that shook dust from rooftops and rattled windows. People emerged from homes and workshops, their faces turned upward in awe and fear. The fleet held position overhead, a silent demonstration of imperial might. Nalani descended alone. Her drop pod touched down in the settlement's central square, stirring up clouds of red dust. She emerged without ceremony, yet with undeniable sovereignty. Her armor gleamed with fresh polishing, command markings clearly visible. A protection detail formed around her, their movements precise and coordinated. They maintained distance, allowing her space while ensuring security. The entire settlement watched in silence. She found Ren outside his rebuilt workshop. He stood with grease-stained hands watching her approach. The distance between them felt wider than the space between stars. Her expression held the weight of command, but also something softer beneath the surface. She spoke his name without title or formality. The single word carried across the quiet square. Her proposition came without preamble. She offered him the position of chief civilian advisor. The role would place him at her side in the imperial court. He would advise on frontier matters, represent outlying systems, and help shape policies affecting countless lives. The offer reframed everything between them. Their personal connection became publicly political. Their private moments now had galactic consequences. The public nature of the offer forced Ren to consider realities beyond his workshop. Accepting meant leaving Rust Harbor, meant entering a world of court politics and imperial protocols, meant becoming someone his neighbors would no longer recognize. He looked from Nalani's earnest expression to the frightened faces of the settlers. Their mechanic had become a pawn in games played with worlds as betting chips. Nalani presented the offer as partnership rather than patronage. She spoke of needing his perspective, not his obedience. Her words emphasized mutual respect over hierarchical deference. She acknowledged his value came from understanding systems others took for granted. His frontier experience offered insights her military advisors lacked. The position would grant him real influence, not just ceremonial status. Ren considered the implications. The workshop behind him represented safety and simplicity. The fleet overhead represented power and complexity. Nalani stood between these worlds, her armor gleaming in the strange half-light of shadowed suns. She had rebuilt his workshop with imperial resources. Now she offered to rebuild his life with imperial opportunities. The compensation felt different this time. Not payment for services, but investment in potential. The protection detail maintained their perimeter. Their presence underscored the offer's seriousness. This wasn't casual invitation, but formal recruitment. Nalani had brought her full authority to this moment. She risked appearing vulnerable before her soldiers by offering power to a frontier mechanic. The gesture showed either brilliant strategy or genuine feeling. Perhaps both. Ren looked at the faces in the crowd. Old man Heston, who taught him welding. Mara, who traded engine parts for repair work. Children who brought him broken toys to fix. These people understood machines and dirt and survival. They didn't understand fleet deployments or imperial politics, yet they would be affected by decisions made in distant council chambers. Nalani waited calmly. Her patience felt different from their workshop days. This was Sovereign's patience, the ability to hold stillness amid tension. She had presented her case. The decision rested with him. The moment stretched, heavy with unspoken histories and possible futures. The fleet's shadow deepened as ships adjusted positions. The humming vibration changed frequency, settling into sustained readiness. Ren felt the weight of eyes upon him. Nalani's hopeful gaze, the settlers' nervous watching, the soldiers' professional assessment. His choice would redefine not just his life, but Rust Harbor's relationship with the empire overhead. He finally spoke. His voice carried clearly in the strange quiet. He asked about terms. The question acknowledged the offer's seriousness without accepting it. He approached this like any complex repair, understanding the specifications before committing to the work. Nalani's expression shifted slightly. The sovereign mask softened around the edges. She recognized his practical approach to monumental decisions. They began discussing details there in the dusty square, the fleet hovering like patient metal birds. Ren looked at the woman standing before him, then at the fleet darkening the sky. He understood what joining her world would mean. The imperial court would try to reshape him. Palace protocols would sand away his edges. He needed anchors to hold himself in place or risk becoming someone he wouldn't recognize. He named his conditions without hesitation. 3 simple demands that sounded almost foolish against the scale of her offer. First, he kept his workshop. The building would remain his property, maintained exactly as he left it. Second, he returned to Rust Harbor regularly, not occasional visits, but scheduled rotations that kept him connected to the frontier. Third, she learned to make real coffee from him, not the synthetic brew served in palace dispensers, but proper ground beans brewed with care. Each condition represented something essential. The workshop stood for his philosophy of repair. It was where he proved that broken things deserved second chances. Keeping it meant preserving his approach to problems. The building itself held memories of his mother's teachings, of neighbors bringing damaged equipment, of long nights solving mechanical puzzles. Letting it go would mean abandoning the core of who he was. The regular returns to Rust Harbor maintained his connection to the community. These people understood practical problems and simple solutions. They valued work over words, action over ceremony. Visiting them would remind him of realities beyond palace politics. It would ground him in the dust and grit that shaped his thinking. Without that connection, he risked losing perspective. The coffee lessons seemed trivial compared to governing worlds. That was the point. They represented shared human moments outside formal roles. Making coffee required slowing down, paying attention, appreciating simple pleasures. It was something people did together without agenda or protocol. Teaching her would create space for genuine connection amid imperial responsibilities. Nalani listened without interruption. Her expression remained neutral, but her eyes showed understanding. She recognized what he was doing. These weren't negotiations for power or wealth. They were safeguards against losing himself. The conditions tested whether she wanted the man or just his skills. Whether she valued his perspective enough to accommodate his needs, she could have refused. The demands were unconventional for someone joining imperial service. Advisors typically sought privileges, not constraints. They wanted access to power, not reminders of their previous lives. Ren asked for the opposite. He wanted limits that protected his identity. The conditions would make his transition harder, not easier. Nalani's protection detail watched the exchange. Their postures remained professional, but their eyes showed curiosity. They'd never seen their sovereign receive demands from a frontier mechanic. The scene violated protocol in multiple ways. Yet she stood listening as if his words carried equal weight to imperial decrees. Ren waited for her response. The settlement held its breath around them. Dust settled slowly in the strange half-light from the hovering ships. His hands remained at his sides, relaxed but ready. He'd stated his terms. The decision now rested with her. Either she accepted him with all his conditions or they parted ways here. She finally nodded. A single precise movement that conveyed acceptance without hesitation. Her voice held no resentment when she spoke. She agreed to all three conditions without modification. The workshop would remain his. Regular visits would be scheduled into imperial rotations. She would learn to make coffee properly. Her agreement came with added provisions. The workshop would receive imperial protection. His travel would be secured. And she would provide the coffee beans herself. The conditions became foundation rather than limitation. They established the framework for their partnership. Ren would bring his frontier perspective to imperial governance. Nalani would maintain connection to the practical realities of her subjects. The agreement balanced power with preservation, duty with identity. Practical demands had protected what mattered most. Her soldiers relaxed slightly at her acceptance. The tension in the square eased. Ren felt something settle inside himself. He hadn't lost himself in the negotiation. He'd established the terms on which he could join her world. The fleet overhead suddenly felt less threatening. It became promise rather than peril. Nalani extended her hand. Not in imperial greeting, but in the way she'd offered tools across his workbench. The gesture acknowledged their new partnership. Freedom took it. Their grip felt familiar despite the formal setting. The mechanic and the sovereign had found common ground through practical terms. Nalani's laughter broke the tension like a sudden pressure release. It wasn't the controlled chuckle of a sovereign entertaining whims. This sound came from deep within, genuine and unexpected. Her shoulders relaxed. The command posture softened into something more human. She looked at Ren not as a subject or strategic asset, but as the man who'd just outlined the terms of his own surrender. Ren felt the tightness leave his own shoulders. The relief was physical, a weight lifting that he hadn't fully acknowledged carrying. Her laughter confirmed what signatures on documents could never establish. She understood the deeper meaning behind his conditions. The workshop wasn't about property rights. The visits weren't about travel schedules. The coffee wasn't about beverages. They were safeguards for his soul, and she recognized them as such. The moment transformed their agreement. It became both political contract and personal covenant. The imperial advisors watching from the protection detail saw a sovereign accepting unusual terms for a valuable appointment. Ren saw a woman accepting him exactly as he was. The duality would define their partnership moving forward. Every policy decision would carry this double weight. imperial necessity balanced against human values. Her laughter faded into a warm silence. The sound had altered the space between them. The fleet overhead seemed less ominous. The dusty square felt less like an imperial stage and more like common ground. Their eyes met with renewed understanding. The potential romance that had flickered in the workshop now solidified into confirmed collaboration. They were partners first, everything else second. The conditions became their foundation rather than their limitations. Ren's workshop would remain his anchor to practical reality. His regular returns to Rust Harbor would keep him connected to the people they served. The coffee lessons would create space for genuine connection outside formal roles. These weren't restrictions on his service, but assurances that his perspective would remain authentic. Their union blended distinct strengths into something new. Frontier practicality met imperial duty. Ren's understanding of broken systems complemented Nalani's experience with power structures. His belief in repair offered alternatives to her training in replacement. They would approach governance like they'd approached the armor, understanding how things worked before attempting to fix them. The pledge extended beyond their personal connection. They weren't just building a relationship. They were committing to galactic rebuilding. The Dominion needed more than efficient administration. It needed the philosophy they discovered in that dusty workshop, that broken things deserved understanding before condemnation. Repair before replacement, compassion before judgment. Nalani's hand came out, not an imperial gesture, but in the way she'd offered tools across his workbench. Ren took it without hesitation. Their grip felt familiar despite the formal setting. The mechanic and sovereign sealed their agreement with touch rather than ceremony. The fleet's engines hummed approval overhead. The protection detail maintained their positions, but their postures softened slightly. The moment completed their transition. They were no longer potential lovers separated by deception and duty. They were confirmed collaborators united by shared purpose. The personal connection remained, but it now served something larger than themselves. Their partnership would test whether frontier values could scale to imperial levels, whether repair philosophy could heal galactic systems. Nalani's expression shifted from amusement to determination. The laughter had sealed their bond, but now work awaited. She turned to her advisors with renewed purpose. Ren stood beside her, his hand still resting in hers. The fleet's shadow seemed less threatening now. It had become their tool rather than their master. The real work of governance could begin. Ren approached imperial politics like a damaged generator. He studied the systems, traced the connections, and found where the failures started. The palace advisors dismissed his methods at first. They preferred traditional approaches, political maneuvering, strategic alliances, careful protocol. Ren ignored their courtly filters. He spoke plain truths that made advisors shift uncomfortably in their seats. His words carried the dust of Rust Harbor into gilded chambers. He identified corruption like diagnosing faulty wiring. A minister's extravagant lifestyle didn't interest him. He tracked the energy distribution patterns instead. Noticed how certain systems received priority funding while others languished. Found the diversion points where resources got redirected. His tools were supply manifests and power grid reports rather than plasma cutters, but the principle remained the same. Find where the flow breaks down and you find the problem. His hands-on approach connected policy to daily life. While advisors debated theoretical models, Ren visited the affected systems. He walked through marketplaces and listened to merchants complain about shipping costs. He inspected water filtration plants and asked mechanics about maintenance schedules. He brought that grounded perspective back to the council chambers. His recommendations came with specific examples. How a tax change would affect a specific farm's harvest. How a trade regulation would alter a specific factory's output. Nalani's leadership reforms gained credibility through his grounding. Her policies became more than theoretical improvements when Ren explained their practical effects. He translated imperial decrees into frontier consequences. Advisors who initially dismissed him began listening when his predictions proved accurate. The minister who doubted his resource allocation plan changed his opinion when Ren showed him exactly how the existing system was being exploited. The proof was in the energy consumption charts, clear as stripped wiring. They rooted out informant networks like removing damaged components. Ren noticed the patterns first in communication logs. Certain messages always coincided with supply ship movements. Specific officials always took leave during inspection cycles. He mapped the connections like circuit diagrams. Nalani's security teams used his maps to conduct precise operations. They removed corrupt elements without disrupting entire departments. The approach mirrored his workshop philosophy: repair what's broken rather than replace the whole system. The Imperial Court slowly adapted to his methods. Advisors began asking different questions. Instead of what's politically feasible, they asked what actually works. Ren's office became known for practical solutions rather than political positioning. He kept a workbench there among the data terminals. Sometimes he'd fix a broken monitor or recalibrate a climate control unit while considering policy problems. The physical work helped him think. Nalani watched the transformation with quiet satisfaction. Her decision to bring him into governance proved wiser than even she'd anticipated. His frontier practicality balanced her imperial experience. Together they addressed problems that had persisted for generations. Corruption that seemed intractable yielded to systematic analysis. Inefficient systems were redesigned with practical efficiency. The Dominion began operating like a well-maintained machine rather than a struggling bureaucracy. Ren's influence extended beyond policy decisions. He changed how people approached problems. Junior officials started looking at data instead of precedents. Department heads began visiting the systems they administered. The imperial apparatus became more responsive, more connected to the realities it governed. The change wasn't dramatic, but it was fundamental. A shift in perspective that started with one mechanic from the frontier. The results spoke for themselves. Supply lines became more reliable. Energy distribution improved across sectors. Corruption cases decreased as oversight systems were redesigned. Frontier settlements received better support without increasing imperial burden. The Dominion operated with new efficiency, its systems cleaned and recalibrated. Ren's philosophy had scaled from a single workshop to galactic governance. He still visited Rust Harbor every 90 days. The regular returns kept him grounded. He'd work in his workshop for a few hours, fixing neighbors' equipment. The simple repairs reminded him why complex systems mattered. Each functioning generator, each repaired ground transport, each working irrigation pump represented the same principle on different scales. Things could be fixed if you understood how they worked. Nalani often joined him on these visits. She'd watch him work, sometimes handing him tools as she had months before. The familiar rhythm returned, tools passing between them, systems being restored, practical problems finding solutions. The coffee afterward tasted better in the workshop than in the palace. They'd sit watching the desert sunset. Two people who'd found that governing galaxies and fixing machines required the same fundamental understanding. The ceremony took place in Rust Harbor's central square, under the harsh midday sun. Imperial banners hung beside handmade settlement flags. The contrast spoke volumes. Gleaming standards representing 800 worlds fluttering next to cloth dyed with local minerals. Nalani stood at a simple podium crafted from salvaged ship plating. Her Imperial guards formed a perimeter, but their stance was respectful rather than imposing. Settlement elders stood beside cabinet ministers, their postures stiff with nervous formality. The declaration itself was brief and direct. Nalani's voice carried across the assembled crowd without amplification. She named Rust Harbor a sovereign protected world under direct Imperial patronage. The words settled over the community like sudden gravity. Farmers who'd worried about drought now had to consider galactic significance. Mechanics who fixed ground transports now stood at the intersection of frontier and empire. The protection pledge carried specific guarantees. Off-world corporations couldn't claim mining rights without local approval. Trade agreements required settlement consent. Imperial patrols would secure the system against raiders and opportunists. The provisions prevented the exploitation that had consumed other frontier worlds. Rust Harbor would develop at its own pace, preserving what made it unique while gaining Imperial support. Ren's influence showed in the details. The declaration specified non-interference in local governance. Customs and traditions received explicit protection. Resources would flow to the settlement without demanding cultural change. He'd ensured the agreement respected what made Rust Harbor valuable, rather than trying to reshape it into something else. His workshop philosophy had scaled to planetary protection. Nalani's closing words resonated beyond the formal language. She spoke of not forgetting kindness amid power. The phrase echoed their first days in the workshop, when repair meant more than technical fixing. It acknowledged that mercy had shaped their connection from the beginning. Her gaze found Ren in the crowd as she spoke. The moment held personal meaning beneath the political significance. The treaty established mutual obligations. Rust Harbor would serve as a model of frontier imperial cooperation. Its success would demonstrate that protection didn't require domination. The Dominion gained a loyal world that believed in the partnership, rather than fearing the power behind it. Both sides committed to building something new, a relationship based on respect rather than submission. The community's reaction mixed pride and uncertainty. Old Man Heston kept glancing at the Imperial ships overhead as if expecting them to descend. Children pointed at the polished armor of the honor guard. Settlement leaders discussed the implications in hushed tones. Their world had suddenly become important in ways they were still processing. Galactic significance carried weight alongside opportunity. Ren watched from beside the makeshift podium. His grease-stained hands looked out of place among Imperial formal wear, but he made no attempt to hide them. This declaration represented the ultimate application of his repair philosophy. You protect what you value, you fix what's broken, you build something better from available materials. The personal had become political because the personal had proven effective. The ceremony concluded with handshakes that bridged light years of difference. Settlement elders clasped hands with Imperial officials. The gestures were awkward at first, then genuinely warm. Shared smiles broke through formal expressions. The integration began not with documents but with human connection. Two different worlds found common ground in a dusty square. The declaration's implications would unfold over years, but its immediate effect was clear. Rust Harbor became visible on galactic charts. Its people gained security without losing autonomy. The protection guaranteed their future while honoring their past. Sometimes guarding what matters most requires not just strength but understanding. The treaty proved that defense and respect could work together. Nalani stepped down from the podium. Her eyes met Ren's across the crowd. The moment held their entire history. Workshop repairs, shared tools, morning light, and now this. Their personal connection had reshaped galactic politics because it was built on practical compassion. The declaration was never about power. It was about preservation. The Dominion's governance shifted like a machine finding its proper calibration. Nalani addressed the Imperial Council with new clarity. Ruling wasn't about accumulating power but managing responsibility, she explained. The difference seemed subtle but changed everything. Power sought control. Responsibility demanded understanding. The distinction came directly from their workshop days, from watching Ren diagnose systems before attempting repairs. They faced planetary-scale problems with workshop philosophy. Ren approached failing agricultural worlds like malfunctioning generators. He studied the systems first: soil composition reports, water distribution maps, economic flow charts. He looked for where the breakdown started rather than just addressing the symptoms. A food shortage wasn't just about insufficient production. It involved transportation bottlenecks, storage limitations, and market manipulations. Fixing it required understanding all components. The Dominion's approach transformed from domination to compassionate invention. Military solutions gave way to systemic repairs. Instead of suppressing revolts with force, they addressed the grievances fueling them. Ren's belief that everything breaks eventually, but almost anything can be fixed if you understand what makes it tick, became policy. Advisors learned to diagnose problems rather than simply react to them. Their personal healing informed galactic repair. Nalani's command experience taught her how systems failed under pressure. Ren's frontier background showed how they could be reinforced. Together, they addressed corruption like damaged wiring, tracing the energy flows, finding the short circuits, replacing only what was truly broken. The approach preserved functional systems while removing problematic elements. They treated broken worlds like Ren had treated broken machines. A planet suffering ecological collapse received careful diagnosis. Teams studied its atmosphere, analyzed its soil, mapped its water systems. Solutions emerged from understanding rather than imposition. Sometimes the fix involved introducing compatible species. Other times it required restructuring human settlements. Always it began with listening to what the world itself revealed. The philosophy scaled beyond expectation. Understanding what made things tick applied to economic systems, social structures, even interstellar relations. Trade disputes were analyzed like misaligned gears. Cultural conflicts were approached like incompatible operating systems. The Dominion became known for creative solutions rather than forceful compliance. Their affection became the model for galactic relationships. The trust they'd built through shared work informed diplomatic approaches. Agreements were crafted like repair plans, mutual understanding leading to mutual benefit. The partnership between sovereign and mechanic demonstrated that different perspectives could create stronger solutions than single viewpoints. Nalani's leadership embodied the new approach. She made decisions with Ren's practical perspective in mind. Policies were tested against frontier realities before implementation. Imperial decrees considered their impact on small settlements as well as core worlds. The Dominion began operating with renewed purpose. Its systems aligned toward genuine improvement rather than mere control. Ren's influence reached every level of governance. His office became known for its workbench amid data terminals. He often fixed equipment while considering policy problems. The physical work helped him think, he explained to curious advisors. They began adopting the practice, finding that hands-on engagement produced clearer thinking. The Imperial Palace slowly filled with small repair projects, a testament to changing perspectives. The repair ethic transformed their personal lives as well. Nalani learned to make proper coffee in Ren's workshop. The ritual became their touchstone amid galactic responsibilities. They'd share a cup while discussing everything from irrigation systems to fleet deployments. The simple act grounded them in shared humanity, despite their extraordinary circumstances. Their private healing had indeed inspired universal repair. The Dominion's transformation proved that personal values could reshape institutions. What began with fixing armored plating in a dusty workshop had become the guiding philosophy for governing 800 worlds. The most important repairs often started with the smallest components, whether machine parts or human connections. The Dominion's command center hummed with quiet efficiency. Ren stood beside Nalani's command throne, his hands still bearing faint grease stains from that morning's work in the palace maintenance bay. Star charts glowed across the main display, showing fleet positions and resource flows across 800 worlds. Their partnership had steadied what was once teetering toward collapse. The galaxy hadn't become perfect, but it had become functional. Broken systems were being repaired rather than replaced. Interstellar challenges continued arriving daily. Renevir's food distribution crisis, the Kessel March's border disputes, rogue corporate expansions into protected systems. Each problem received their shared approach: diagnosis before action, understanding before intervention. They treated galactic issues like complex machinery, studying how components interacted before attempting repairs. The Dominion that had once dominated now sought to heal, and the difference was measurable in stable trade routes and peaceful settlements. They maintained their connection to simpler realities. Every 90 days, without fail, they returned to Rust Harbor. The Imperial shuttle landed outside the settlement, avoiding ceremony. Ren spent hours in his workshop fixing neighbors' equipment. Nalani walked the dust streets speaking with farmers and mechanics. These visits grounded their galactic perspective in practical needs. The frontier remained their touchstone, reminding them why governance mattered beyond palace walls. The coffee lessons became cherished rituals amid their responsibilities. Nalani's hands, which could command fleets, carefully measured ground beans in Ren's workshop. He watched her technique with patient amusement. The process required focus they rarely found amid imperial duties. Steam rising from the brewer carried the scent of ordinary moments in extraordinary lives. They'd drink from chipped mugs while discussing everything from irrigation systems to diplomatic treaties. Rust Harbor thrived under sovereign protection. Off-world corporations respected the settlement's boundaries. Imperial patrols kept raiders away. The community maintained its character while gaining security. Children who'd once hidden from passing ships now waved at Imperial cruisers overhead. The galaxy learned that protected worlds could preserve their identity while benefiting from Imperial association. Ren's workshop stood unchanged at the settlement's edge, a symbol of values that scaled from tools to treaties. The galaxy slowly absorbed their philosophy. Broken systems found fixers instead of replacements. Planetary governors began studying problems rather than suppressing symptoms. The approach spread through example rather than decree. An agricultural world facing famine received soil analysis teams instead of food drops. A mining colony with labor unrest got mediation instead of security forces. The repair ethic scaled from Ren's workbench to interstellar relations. Their personal healing continued alongside galactic repair. Nalani's command isolation eased through their partnership. Ren's frontier solitude found purpose in broader service. They balanced each other's strengths and limitations. Her strategic vision complemented his practical insight. His grounding tempered her authority. Together they addressed challenges that would have overwhelmed either alone. The partnership became their greatest repair project. The final image showed their ongoing work. Ren at a data terminal analyzing resource distribution patterns, his fingers tapping keys with the same precision they'd used on plasma cutters. Nalani reviewing fleet deployments while sipping properly brewed coffee. Their shared console displayed both Imperial Affairs and Rust Harbor's weather reports. The duality defined their success, galactic scale perspective anchored in local reality. Their choice to fix each other had indeed fixed a universe. The Dominion operated with renewed purpose, its systems functioning smoothly after years of strain. Settlements received support without surrendering autonomy. Borders remained peaceful through understanding rather than force. The repair philosophy proved that broken things could be made whole at any scale, from neural interfaces to interstellar governments. The work continued without fanfare. Another crisis would arrive tomorrow. Another system would need attention, but the foundation held firm. Two broken souls who'd chosen understanding over replacement, repair over abandonment. They faced the future not as sovereign and consort, but as partners who'd proven that compassion could scale alongside power. The most important repairs often started with the smallest components. The story ends where it began, with repair work. Small components first, then systems, then worlds. That air regulator for local farmers started this galactic transformation. Ren's belief in fixing rather than replacing scaled from machinery to empires. The Dominion's survival came from one mechanic's willingness to help a stranger. Consider what in your life could use practical hope instead of replacement. A relationship, a project, a dream. Sometimes the most universal changes begin in the most humble workshops, not with grand gestures but with simple acts of repair. The breaching charge detonated with concussive fury. The workshop door disintegrated into shrapnel. Ren's ears rang with the explosion's aftermath. Smoke filled the space, acrid and choking. Figures emerged through the swirling haze. They moved with predatory grace, weapons tracking across the interior. Their armor bore no insignia, but the tactical precision screamed professional military. Ren hit the concrete floor instinctively. His training kicked in before thought could follow. He rolled behind a workbench, scattering tools across the floor. Glass shattered as a stray energy bolt struck shelving. The air crackled with suppressed weapon fire. These weren't frontier raiders. Their movements coordinated like combat drones. Each step served a purpose. Each weapon placement covered an angle. Lyra transformed before his eyes. The woman who'd kissed him moments earlier vanished. In her place stood something ancient and lethal. Her body settled into a combat stance without conscious thought. Her eyes scanned the room, calculating threats with cold efficiency. She didn't reach for the repaired armor. She didn't need to. She moved first toward the nearest attacker. Her hand struck like a snake. Fingers found the gap between helmet and chest plate, a precise pressure application. The man collapsed without sound. She took his weapon as he fell. The motion flowed into her next action. She fired twice. Two attackers dropped. Headshots through visors. No wasted movement. No hesitation. Ren watched from his cover. The woman he'd worked alongside through the night became a force of nature. Her efficiency chilled him. She moved through the chaos like death itself. Each motion ended a life. Each decision maximized lethal effect. She used the workshop's layout better than its owner could have. Workbenches became cover. Tool racks provided concealment. Hanging chains turned into obstacles for her enemies. The firefight lasted 17 seconds. Ren counted them in heartbeats. Silence returned more abruptly than violence had arrived. Smoke drifted through sunlight beams. Bodies lay where they'd fallen. Lyra stood amid the carnage, weapon held ready. Her breathing remained even. Her expression showed no emotion. She'd eliminated 8 highly trained soldiers without taking a scratch. One attacker stirred near the doorway. His hand crept toward a discarded weapon. Lyra's boot came down on his wrist. The crunch of bone echoed in the sudden quiet. She didn't look at him. Her eyes remained on the other bodies, ensuring none threatened. Her voice cut through the haze when she spoke to the injured man. It held the tone Ren recognized from her stories of command bridges. Absolute authority. The man spat blood onto the concrete. His gaze found Ren behind the workbench. The weapon in his undamaged hand shifted aim. Not toward Lyra, toward Ren. The movement felt like a test. Lyra's expression didn't change. Her own weapon remained trained on the man's head. She spoke a single word, a name Ren didn't recognize. The man's finger tightened on the trigger. Lyra fired first. The energy bolt took the man through his visor. His weapon discharged into the ceiling. Dust sifted down from the impact point. She'd chosen Ren's life over taking the man prisoner. The decision happened without apparent thought. Tactical necessity overrode intelligence gathering. The team leader lay near the doorway. His armor bore command markings now visible through damaged plating. He coughed blood onto his chest plate. His eyes found Lyra through the smoke. He spoke with dying breath. His words carried across the quiet workshop. He called her by a title Ren had only heard in history texts. He spoke of the hegemony waiting to reclaim its property. The scale of the conflict suddenly expanded beyond the workshop's walls. Lyra walked to the dying man. She stood over him without pity. Her boot turned him onto his back. She removed his helmet. The face beneath was young, maybe 20 standard years. She spoke quiet words Ren couldn't hear. The man's eyes widened. Then she ended him with mechanical precision. Ren rose slowly from behind the workbench. The smell of blood and ozone filled his nostrils. He looked from the bodies to the woman standing among them. The kiss they'd shared felt like something from another lifetime. The trust they'd built lay shattered among the dead. He'd witnessed her lethal capability, understood the weight of the title the dying man had used. The woman called Lyra never existed. She'd always been someone else entirely. The smoke cleared slowly. Bodies lay where they'd fallen. Weapons cooled on concrete. Ren stood amid the wreckage of his workshop. Broken tools scattered the floor. Shelves hung askew from shattered mounts. The air carried the stink of energy discharge and fresh blood. He looked at the woman who'd kissed him moments before the violence. Her posture changed. The subtle slump of exhaustion vanished. Her shoulders squared with unconscious authority. Her chin lifted to a precise angle. The woman called Lyra disappeared behind a mask of command. Her eyes held distance now, measuring the room not as a shared space but as territory to control. She moved with the expectation that reality would rearrange itself to accommodate her will. Her armor told new stories in the morning light. Imperial insignia gleamed where battle grime had been cleaned away by the fight. Command markings showed along the collar and shoulder plates. These weren't standard military designations. They signaled fleet command level authority. Sovereignty markings circled the wrists like ceremonial braces. Ren recognized the symbols from historical archives. They represented houses that ruled entire systems. She spoke first. Her voice held a resonance that hadn't been there before. It carried weight beyond the workshop walls. She offered explanations about necessary deception, security protocols, operational security. The words sounded rehearsed, delivered with the cadence of official statements. Ren heard the distance in her tone. The shift from intimacy to administration. He interrupted her. His voice sounded raw in the quiet space. He asked how he could possibly know what was real with her. The question hung between them. She flinched at the hurt in his eyes. Her hand started to reach for him, then stopped. The gesture died half-formed. The dynamic had already shifted. Client and mechanic became subject and sovereign in that moment. She offered compensation. The Dominion didn't forget its debts. The phrase sounded like something from a governmental pledge. She mentioned resources for rebuilding, advanced materials, off-world contractors. The offer felt like payment for services rendered, not apology for destruction caused. It framed their connection as transactional. The intimacy of shared work became another line item in Imperial accounting. Ren looked around his destroyed workshop. Each broken tool represented years of careful collection. Each damaged system held memories of repairs completed for neighbors. This space had been his sanctuary from a universe that valued replacement over repair. Now it lay shattered by the very power structures he'd avoided. The woman who represented those structures stood offering compensation, like one might pay for spilled drinks. Her armor's insignia seemed to glow in the morning light. The markings declared her authority over hundreds of worlds, command of fleets that could reduce systems to dust. The scale of her reality dwarfed his frontier existence. Their days together suddenly felt like interlude, a sovereign's temporary escape from duty rather than genuine connection. She tried to bridge the gap. Her voice softened slightly. She spoke of real feelings amidst necessary deception. The words rang hollow against the evidence of her transformation. The command posture, the imperial markings, the effortless lethality she demonstrated. These things defined her more truly than any whispered confession in the dark. Ren turned from her. His hands picked up a broken plasma cutter from the floor. The housing was cracked. The power cell leaked acid onto his fingers. He examined the damage without seeing it. His mind processed the impossible scale of her reality. 800 worlds. Fleet command, sovereignty. These concepts belonged in history texts, not his workshop. She watched him withdraw. Her expression showed conflict between command responsibility and personal regret. The sovereign needed to secure the situation. The woman wanted to explain. The former won out. She activated comm systems in her armor. Reports began streaming in from orbital assets. Her attention divided between the man before her and the empire waiting beyond. The rising sun cast long shadows through the damaged doorway. Dust motes danced in the light beams. Ren stood holding his broken tool. She stood coordinating imperial responses. The space between them stretched into light years. He finally understood why stellarite crystals meant nothing to her. Why advanced technology was commonplace. Why repair fascinated her as novelty. She came from a world where everything was replaceable. Boots approached outside. Imperial security teams arriving to secure the area. Their footsteps echoed with military precision. Ren looked at the woman one last time. Her eyes met his across the wreckage. Then she turned to greet her soldiers, the sovereign fully restored. He was already alone in the ruins,